Okay, so Titration Lab. We've got our setup here. We've got our burette, which is just a really, really long graduated cylinder. And then it has this little handle right here, which allows us to let the liquid flow through here. Okay, so that's going to be our base. We also have our Erlenmeyer flask. This is where we're going to put the acid. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to bring this over here so you can see this. And what we're going to start with is we already know what the known concentration of our standardized NaOH is. This is going to be 0.10 molar. In our balanced equation, we are starting with hydrochloric acid, and we are reacting that with sodium hydroxide. And so our product is going to be sodium chloride and water. So we're going to take our acid and we're going to neutralize it with a base. So acid bases neutralize each other, and what we're going to make is salt and water. So we're essentially going to make some salty water. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this over to the back, and I'll show you the data table as we are doing this. All right, so what we're going to do first is this is already filled. The burette is already filled with our base, our known sodium hydroxide. Okay, we already know what the concentration of that is. What we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what is the concentration of our acid. So how we're going to do this is we're going to fill this graduated cylinder with 10 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. Okay, so there's one. All right, so there's 10 right there. So now I'm going to put that 10 milliliters of hydrochloric acid, I'm going to put it into the Erlenmeyer flask. Now this is an acid. Now what else I'm going to do is I'm going to add what's called phenolphthalein, and phenolphthalein is a indicator, and this is going to tell us when we have neutralized the solution. What it's actually going to tell us is when this thing has turned into a base. So what we want to do is we want to add acid until it's completely neutralized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and let's see if we can zoom in on that. Okay, and what you'll start to see is it's starting to turn pink. Okay, it's starting to turn pink because that's the base part, but it's being neutralized by the acid, and so the pink is starting to go away. Now what you guys will see is it'll take longer and longer for that pink to sort of disappear. That means we're getting close to the neutralization point. So we're going to keep swirling. We're going to add a little more, and we're going to keep swirling this, and notice it's being neutralized. So we're going to keep adding, and what I want is like the faintest pink color that I can get. Okay, so I'm going to keep adding. Now notice it took a lot longer for it to go away, so I'm going to add a little more. Okay, I'm going to add a little more. And it's taking a lot longer for it to go away, so I know I'm getting close. So I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm going to swirl it, and what you notice is now it's bright pink, and now the pink's not going away. That's because not only have I neutralized the acid, but now I've made it slightly basic. Okay, now I started the burette, I started at 0 way up at the top, so my volume of acid was 10. I added 10 milliliters of my acid. My initial volume was 0 for the sodium hydroxide. My final volume, I don't know if you can see this, but it's right about here. And if I read that on the burette, it's about, I'd say about 19.8. So 19.8 milliliters. Okay, now the total volume of the base used, I'm just going to subtract these two, but because we started with 0, it's going to be 19.8 again. All right, now I'm gonna use 10 milliliters again for trial number 2. Now my initial volume of base is gonna be the same thing because I'm just gonna start at this 19.8 milliliters on the burette. That's gonna be my new starting point for my next trial. And now I wanna know how much base did it take to neutralize 10 milliliters of acid. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing again. I wanna do a couple trials just to make sure. And you can see here, like the pinkish color it's really gotten really light pink, but it's still pink. So I know that it's right on the sort of border of being neutralized. So I'm gonna rinse this off real quick and then we'll do another trial. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do the exact same thing again. We're gonna do trial 2. So once again, I'm gonna start with 10 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. Okay, and again, this is trial 2. All right, so there's my 10 milliliters of hydrochloric acid going into the flask. I'm gonna add my phenolphthalein. So I'm gonna add my 1, 2, 3 drops of phenolphthalein. Okay, and now I'm gonna start doing the same thing. I'm going to titrate again. I'm gonna add some base to my acid until I neutralize that acid. So I'm gonna open that up. I'm just gonna swirl this every once in a while just to make sure that I don't go too far. Okay, and again, the longer it takes for this pink to go away, the closer we get to that neutralization point. All right, so we're getting close. Okay, so we gotta still keep going, but we're getting close. So it's starting to disappear. So we're getting close. I'm going to add a little more base. Now we're getting really close. So I'm going to slow down the flow of the base. And I'm going to just stop it, stir it. I want to try and get the faintest pink that I can. Okay, so we're getting close. We're right there. It's just a couple more drops and I think we're gonna be, I think this is gonna stay pink. Okay, so this is actually not good. I actually went right by it. So that's too much, but that's okay. We'll use that number. We wanted it to be a little lighter pink than that, but just for the sake of time, we'll go with the little darker. So we kind of added a little too much base, but that's all right. It's neutralized. So now we come over here and we read the new volume on the burette, and we're at right at about 38.6. So that's my final volume, 38.6 milliliters. Okay, so that's my final volume of my second trial. All right, so now I'll let you guys subtract these two to get the total volume of the base used there. Don't worry about trial 3, we don't need to do that. But now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the calculations for trial 1, then we're gonna do the calculations for trial 2, and then you will put your answer right here for 1 and 2, and then you're gonna take the average of the two, and that's gonna go in that spot right there. And then once you guys have done that, just let me know, and then what I can do is I will give you the actual value of that, and we can see how close we got to the actual concentration of this. All right, so that's using the formula that we just talked about earlier in class, M1V1, M2V2, to find the unknown acid concentration. You're also going to need this known concentration and the mole ratio, which is 1 to 1. Hope that's helpful.